Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Talking About the Taboo with Natalie Malloy. I'm back, better than ever, as you see in the background. I have a new sign on air. That's super exciting. I got it from Five Below. I'm trying to be a little bit more fancy with my background. I even have a ring light now. Someone said that I needed a better camera. Hopefully that helps. I love you all. And today we have a special guest, and I'm really excited to hear what she has to say. She is a tantric healer. She's going to introduce herself a little bit better than I will, but here she is, Ava Pikul. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
It's Pikul, by the way, Natalie, but that's totally fine.
Happens a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
I have the same problem with my last name. So.
Yeah, I'm an Authentic Tantra practitioner, a sexologist, as well as a transformational therapist. And I work with all different kinds of people, especially in the realms of spiritual healing, sexual healing, even different emotional things that are going on in people's lives, and overall just healing through pleasure.
So what is your background? What education did you go through to get to being a sexologist and a tantric healer?
I went through the Institute of Authentic Tantra, which is the only government accredited institute of Tantra in the entire world. We practice and teach lineage based Tantra, which is rooted in Tibetan Buddhism, which is basically where Authentic Tantra is from when we're teaching, practicing from lineage. And a lot of what we see in the West is Neo Tantra or sacred sexuality. And so they're kind of pulled from a different cloth, I guess you can say. And there's different intentions and practices interwoven within those spectrums. So I really like to be clear on the type of Tantra that I'm bringing forward, because it is not sacred sexuality or Neo Tantra. It is based in Tibetan Buddhism. So a lot of the foundational teachings that I move people through is like the Tibetan 5 elements, which is all about our energy system, and then how that's interwoven and interplays with our process of sexual healing, our mental and emotional states, physical symptoms. So that's really where the root of my practice stems from. And then I start to layer on top subconscious healing as well through transformational therapy, which is a type of hypnosis that incorporates NLP, CBT, neuroscience, psychology, all of these wonderful methods. And it's so incredibly healing and transformative. So I really have this belief, through the powerful tools that I've been able to use myself as well as with my clients, is that healing doesn't always have to be this painful process that's ongoing for decades and decades and decades. Like, healing, yes, is a process in and of itself, but I'm talking about those really big things that we seem to just keep coming up and we feel stuck and unfulfilled. And the methods that I use and have embodied throughout the years are incredibly healing and incredibly powerful and potent. So yeah, that's a little bit about my certifications, I guess you can say.
Your passion behind your voice is extremely empowering, and I love it. You're talking about something that you really love, and I can tell. Where did this love come from exactly? For myself, like, my family was super open about sex my entire life, and everyone referred to it as taboo. So that's kind of where I got my love for it. So where'd your passion begin, per se?
Well, we can rewind here and go back to like when I graduated high school. I basically traveled to India, and I traveled all over the world for a few years. And, we can say this was like the beginning of my spiritual awakening, which I really hate that term. I kind of like gag in my mouth every time I hear someone say that, but that's the best way I can describe it. Is like, I went to these places where, like, I'm thinking it's the birthplace of enlightenment, right? I'm going to learn all these wonderful things. And when I left those places, I actually, I kind of thought to myself, fuck this, to be honest. And there was a lot of distrust for me. A lot of what I was hearing was basically like, in the spiritual realms of like, you are not your body, you are not your emotions, you are not, your sexuality, you are not any of these things. And for me, I really had an aversion towards that type of path or understanding. And I knew that, especially since exploring my body from a very young age, that there was more to my sexuality to my physical reality that I wanted to dive deeper into. And
Explore.
I just didn't have those answers. Everything that everybody else was telling me, especially in like these types of like spiritual communities, was very much the opposite of that. And then you had the flip side where when I did start exploring what Tantra meant and all of that, it was totally over sexualized. And, you know, like, I'm not trying to beat around the bush here or anything, but like, I didn't want to sit in a circle with a bunch of women with dressed in all red and channeling some goddess energy. Like, that's just, I felt like that was not authentic. That's not what I thought was in my, I guess, in my path. So that's kind of what I was seeing, especially in the realms of like sacred sexuality. And I was like, I don't jive with either of these. So
Right.
I was kind of just in that middle ground for a long time until I came across Authentic Tantra and started to dive deeper into that. But I would say my journey really started, what led me to what my life and experiences are now is it was distrust. And then obviously we can also maybe say that was some form of discernment, right? But I didn't believe most of what I was told until I got a chance to embody it myself. And I don't know if that's just my personality or whatever it was, but it's very clear that I chose the path that I'm supposed to be on, and things, you know, have aligned just
Ever so
miraculously
perfectly.
afterwards. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not perfect, but you know, it's just really clear. I have the signposts all the time that I'm doing exactly what I've been put here on this earth to do. Yeah.
And I love that, and I think so as well. You embody that. You talk about it with such passion, like I had said. So yeah, you are doing what you're supposed to do. So good for you. Very Scorpio of you as well. I know you're a Scorpio, and you talk about that on your page. I love Scorpios, and they're very determined, and they also have trust issues under everything, like that means relationships means
Yeah.
facts.
I definitely
too.
I definitely have Scorpio in my chart. I think I'm a Scorpio moon, but I'm actually a Leo. Yeah.
Yeah, confidence. I pay attention to all of those. What am I? Capricorn, Scorpio, Gemini. Capricorn,
Nice.
Scorpio, Gemini. Yeah, I love that stuff. I pay attention to it. I look at my daily horoscope all of the time. I need to do way more research into like the in depths of it. But it's pretty accurate usually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure your confidence comes from the Leoness, because every Leo I've met is extremely confident and knows what the fuck they're talking about.
I didn't always feel that way, that's for sure. But
Within time. And so was your confidence and your sense of you gained through your process of authentic tantra?
absolutely, 1000%. I mean, it's there's a lot of things in my life that I went through. I'm often called like a wounded healer, and I kind of rejected that type of, I guess, labeling for a long time, as well as, you know, the labeling as being Buddhist and the labeling of being a tantrika. I kind of rejected a lot of these labels for a long time. And, you know, I started to realize as I became more embodied in my own practice, like, it's okay that I'm adding, like, it's okay if I am a healer. It's okay if I am, you know, a tantrika. It doesn't mean that I'm blending into the background with everybody else. I do
I don't
have
think so.
my own unique spin on things. I'm not just regurgitating information. And, you know, when I step forward and I have an opinion about something, or I want to bring the medicine to the world, like, it's from this place of like, I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And, you know, that doesn't always mean that it's digested well by everybody. And it's not, you know, always meant to be. But what I can say is that I am showing up from a place of love, compassion, and care. And that's the space that I will always show up in, because I give a shit. And the work that I'm doing demands that. It demands that type of respect for the practices, for the tools that I'm bringing forward, because this stuff is not just something to play around with. And it's powerful. I mean, there's so many things that have come up for me, for my clients, that are just, it's difficult to put words to. I mean, we have past life memories that are interwoven within our sexual center. We have karmic links that are going on. So, when people come to me for this type of healing, for this type of embodiment, whatever it may be, they're here for a very specific reason, even if they don't know what that might be. And that is very clearly shown up over and over again. So yeah, my confidence has stemmed from, and I definitely don't always feel this way, that's for sure, but just from the practices, from being consistent in my devotion to my own path instead of being taken in all of these different directions all the time. It's so easy in this world with so much information, but I really truly believe, like, to find that thing that so deeply resonates within you and that you can stick to for an extended period of time, that is how you're going to become the master of your reality, of your sexuality, of your pleasure, of all of the things that we really desire. And that's true fulfillment, right? It's not about looking for the next best thing all the time. It's about knowing what you know and putting that into practice, putting that into action. And that's where the medicine gets to alchemize through us and for the benefit of all, not just ourselves.
I think as well, I have a sense of like imposter syndrome when I'm speaking about something that I do know. And like I am still learning, and I am very aware of that. But in these times where I'm talking to people or they're coming to me for help and I'm like, I know what I'm talking about. I do. I have the education, I have the research, I have everything. It's like I get lost in this, like, am I good enough? And it's like there's this like heavy feeling where I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing yet. Like I'm there. I'm at that like tip of the tongue type of thing, but there's something missing. And I've been trying to like get there, but it's like it's always like a stampede in it. I don't know what's going on. So
yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot of people that experience similar things. It's like externally everything is fine. It's not like the world is falling apart. And even if it is, right, perhaps there's still this lingering sense of unfulfillment. And I really feel that's due to a lack of presence, that we can just really sit within the discomfort and allow whatever, we can call it spirit, we can call it our Buddha nature, our infinite self, to come through and guide us to that next level. And, that's not some big woo-woo thing, but I think that's what a lot of people are striving towards, is that deeper next level of connection, not just with the body and sexuality and pleasure, but like with the universe as a whole, and yeah, I think that ultimate connection really demands our presence and attention to just the way that we're feeling right here and right now, so that we can really evolve into that next level of our existence.
So you talked about discomfort. My friend that passed away, he had a tattoo on his arm that said, "Seek discomfort, live freely." And that is something that I have lived by since, because it is very true. I always wanted to live in the comfortable. I never wanted to change. I got out of a toxic relationship that I kept going back to several times because I was so comfortable. And now I see my life, like, right? Like I see how much I've gone through, how much people I've met, opportunities I've gained because I left the comfortability, seeked discomfort, and now I'm living freely. And so I think a lot of what you do kind of opens up that space to be uncomfortable, because they don't know what they're doing, right? They don't know anything about this much when they come into it, but you're teaching them and you're bringing them into that uncomfortability, making them comfortable with it, and now they're living. So I feel like, is that kind of what your vibe?
Yeah, it's about pushing the edges, like coming up to those uncomfortable pieces and then starting to layer our pleasure on top and allowing the alchemy to happen. It's not about like Tantra is not about looking at these like stages per se, like, oh, once I heal this, then I can go to the next level of my pleasure and then I'm going to experience XYZ. It's more like this wave. So if you can imagine Tantra like this wave where we push up against that edge, that discomfort, whatever it's, maybe it's the emotion of anxiety, depression, anger, whatever it may be. right? And then we're able to layer the practice of pleasure, which is many different things that can mean a lot of different things, on top of that, so that it's alchemizing through from the inside out, right? Instead of us trying to push it away or deflect it or try to push pleasure or sexuality like through it, it's alchemizing it through the inside out. It's this grand experience, I guess, of full self-acceptance. I guess that's, the easiest way to describe it, is like accepting ourselves for where we're at in these pieces of the discomfort, especially when we're talking about emotions. We can't talk about sexuality and pleasure, right, without talking about our emotions and how much wisdom is there, right? So, these are the pieces that I start to look in with my clients, and including myself. Like, I'm not some perfect, enlightened human being over here. Like, I have some really hard moments, but what I do know is that always coming back to that embodiment of what I know really works is that pleasure, using pleasure as that medicine, as the antidote to the emotional, mental, physical afflictions that we're experiencing. And, Tantra is a spiritual science. It's a spiritual science. It is a technology. And this stuff is encoded within our bodies. And it's up to us to just step in and start to unlock that encoding within ourselves. Like, you're built for this, it's not something that's outside of you. It's not some magic fairy dust that I'm going to sprinkle into your life and you're going to automatically have so much joy, fulfillment, all of the things. It really takes someone actively to step in and just say yes, and show up for themselves. And when we come up against those afflictions and the belief patterns associated with them, right, we're starting to work with the medicine there of the alchemy of the pleasure and of the sensations and of all of the things, right? So that we can, I don't want to use the word arrive, but so that we can step fully into the presence that we're really desiring. And, to me, that's ultimate connection. And that's what we're all really striving towards, right? Connection is the antidote to our suffering. Doesn't matter if we're talking about psychotherapy or other types of modalities. It doesn't matter what we're talking about in terms of healing. It's all about connection. And where can you find the pieces of connection that, or the way that you want or choose to connect, right? What is that path for you? And where can you continuously arrive back to that feeling of connection, even when things are falling apart, even when you don't feel like getting out of bed, even when the relationship isn't perfect, right?
So when you find yourself in the hard time and you're going through your emotions, you were talking about like, you need to actually talk about your emotions. Most people do not talk about their emotions, and they use sex, as you call it, a false sense of control. Please tell me more about what you mean by that and how to kind of like fix that issue that we as a humanity literally have.
Yeah, I think that this is an easier conversation when we talk about the differences between gratification and fulfillment. So, right, we can have the same situation sitting in front of us, whether we're engaging in sex, right, or choosing to have sex with this person or ourselves or whatever it may be. And it can have a completely different intention behind it. And a lot of we have unconscious behaviors related to everything in life, but especially when it comes to sex, it can get a little confusing because we can use sex for a false sense of control. So, I'm sure that we have all done this, right? I know that for myself, it was a false sense of control when I felt like I was not in control of my emotions, my emotional state, my reality. And a lot of this had to do with trust. I didn't trust myself. I didn't fully trust other people. I didn't trust my body. I didn't trust the world around me. So, of course, that's going to result in me grasping right, for this false sense of control. And I did that through sex, and I was also a stripper for a while there too. So, using my sexuality in general did give me that false sense of control for a while, and until it didn't work anymore. And right, we have to look at these pieces of like, am I tricking my own mind into believing this is fulfilling? Or am I engaging within my sexuality or the act of sex so that I feel better just for the split moment in time? And then I have to repeat it all over again. Right. And we do this with all different things in life. And the best way that I can really embody these differences between what is fulfillment versus gratification is gratification is this feeling that, again, it's like you fill halfway up for however long that act is going on for, and then perhaps afterwards you feel worse than before. And fulfillment, right, is quite the opposite of that. It's actively engaging in sex, in the sexuality, in anything in life, and feeling this overall sense of awareness and intention going into it throughout the experience and then afterwards, right? So if you're just checking out and dissociating, right, before, during, or after, right, that's a pretty clear indicator that that experience might be more so just so you feel okay and you're using it as this coping mechanism rather than really getting to the root cause of the emotional afflictions that are underneath the surface, right? And I also don't want to demonize gratification, because sometimes that's the medicine that we need, but it's about having the intention and the awareness of when we're choosing gratification versus when we're actually choosing fulfillment, right? So when we're feeling out of control, we're actually allowing the subconscious mind to run the show, because the subconscious mind loves to create a story. So it's going to create a story of like, well, if I do this, then I'll feel better, right? Or whatever the story is. Sometimes it can be quite elaborate, right? But again, fulfillment is quite the opposite of that. It's about us peeling back the layers and being able to just be aware and conscious of the decisions that we're making.
I love the idea where you talked about our subconscious makes a story, and usually it's through disassociation. I disassociate all damn day. That's not just in the bedroom. In the bedroom, it's probably on all-time high. I'm still trying to find that inner, like, so after getting out of that relationship, sex kind of became it just was sex. For me, it was just gaining experience. I was only with a couple of people. I went through a whole thing where, there was medical problems. And then now I'm on dating apps, and I'm dating and I'm seeing people, and I'm not having sex with everybody, but I'm feeling that sense of like, right when we get to that point, I'm like, what am I doing this for? And I think that might be me trying to get to fulfillment instead of gratification. Say if I were to have sex with this person, would this be for me or would this be for them? It feels like somehow I'm having sex for them, not for me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a very frustrating thing. And then you also talked about body count and sexual shame. And that's something that I'm trying, I've been with so-and-so amount of people, and I'm like, oh my God, if I sleep with this person, that's another number. I hate numbers. That's another number on top of it. Am I going to feel used after? What's going to happen? Like, I always think about the ending instead of the during. And it's emotionally, physically, and intellectually fucking frustrating.
Yeah.
So tell me more about how, like, you help people with, that use celibacy as an avoidance and sexual shame and whatnot.
Yeah. So I think that this concept of celibacy is really, it's becoming more and more widespread, whether it's inside of more spiritual type circles or not. I think that people are picking it up and automatically using it more so as a coping mechanism than something that is actually going to help heal the underlying issues, right? And I just want to go back for a moment. Like when I was studying in places like India, I remember one of one of the women in our group, she went up to our teacher and basically asked him or told him, I'm thinking about being celibate after this program or whatever. And he kind of looked at her like very confused. And he's like, basically, he said, why would you ever want to become celibate if you've never fully experienced your sexual expression? He didn't use those exact words, but your sexuality or sexual expression to the fullest extent. And to me, that's where a lot of people get it wrong. And I'm not saying go out there and have sex with 1,000 people, but what I'm saying is that you can, especially when it comes to Tantra, it's about exploring your own body first and being able to work with those emotions and the afflictions and the patterns that are actually coming up during those experiences, rather than avoiding them by having sex with another person or by not having sex at all, right? And that gives you a chance to actually navigate those experiences rather than putting them onto other people or avoiding them altogether. And again, like when we're talking about the concept of Tantra or even Tantric sex, I mean, it has less to do with having sex with another person and way more to do with your own internal experiences that are happening and you being able to form connection with yourself. So, and when I've worked with other clients before who have been celibate in the past, I can tell you that 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work like people think it's going to work. A lot of people can be pretty much driven insane on a mental, emotional level, especially when they choose to have sex again, because all of that stuff is now flooding back up to the surface and they don't know how to cope with it anymore. So that form of avoidance can be a form of repression. And if you don't already have a practice where you're able to heal and navigate these things, then sex is only going to amplify them even more when you decide to have sex again. So the answer for me anyways, because I don't practice celibacy, never have and never will, is to actually form a relationship to self-pleasure first so that you can actually feel safe in your body and you know how to navigate your emotions with more ease, and you're not right. And you're also forming this awareness and discernment for when you choose to have sex with other people. Discernment is key here. And what's very interesting, Natalie, is that discernment, the wisdom of discernment, actually resides within the sexual center. So if we shut off our sexuality by becoming celibate and ignoring this energy center, guess what? We're actually deterring any type of discernment that we have within our thoughts, emotions, and actions outside of ourselves. So this is kind of like a double-edged sword that nobody seems to talk about because, right, our sexuality, it's not just about sex, right? It's not just about sexual energy. It's about the energetic qualities, the wisdom that arises from us just actively engaging with it inside and outside of sexual activity, right? And this is maybe something that sounds a little bit more woo-woo to some people, but it's much closer and much more accessible than we believe it to be. And the wisdom and qualities that can arise from us engaging with it heads on is incredibly medicinal. It's not something that should be avoided. I think that it's more so something that is misunderstood due to spiritual traditions that are monastic, that are, where monks practice things like this, that they don't even engage within the sexual center, right? And we have to look at that of like, where are these practices actually stemming from? And does it actually resonate? Because we can't just pick and choose all the time, like these little blips of things from different traditions and concepts, because that's where things start to get murky and things start to get really manipulated and misunderstood even more. And it can cause a lot of harm.
So when you say the center of discernment is within our sexual, was it within our sexual?
The sex chakra, our sexuality, our sex center, yes.
So that's what brings me to the sexual trigger points, and the chakras. And I know we were talking about previously, your take on it. A lot of the previous things, what I know is the chakras are sexual pinpoints, and there's like the throat chakra, which is like what getting good head and pleasure will come from. This is what I researched and I learned. Then there was like less energy flow within a certain chakra. It's all up in the air, and I'm still learning, and that's what you're here for. What is your take on chakras and pinpoints, sexual pinpoints?
I've never heard of the term sexual pinpoint, so I'm not exactly sure on where that is coming from. What I do know is that I practice and teach from the Tibetan 5 elements, so that we actually have 5 chakras in the elemental system. This is completely different than the 7 chakra system that aligns over the spine, the spinal column.
Mm-hmm.
In this practice in particular of Tantra, we don't use the spine, we don't use Kundalini energy, and we don't use the 7 chakra system. We actually use the elemental system, and then we have caps. So basically, we have the energy that is enclosed within us rather than shooting the energy out the top of the head through the spine. So this allows us to have a much more grounded experience within our embodiment of that energy within ourselves. So the 5 elemental chakras is the fire element at the sexual center, the earth element at the navel, and then we have space element at the heart, air element at the throat, and then water element in the top of the head. And each one of these represents an antidote to a root poison. So a root poison is basically something that causes human suffering, right? So like water element is the antidote to anger, while fire element is the antidote to attachment. So these are all things that cause emotional and mental and physical and all sorts of issues within our human conditioning. So basically, we use the elemental system in order to purify whatever blockages are getting in the way, because in this tradition, we believe that the energy body is senior to the physical body, which means that anything that is happening within our physical body, within our symptoms, our emotional symptoms, whatever it may be, is a result of an imbalance within the energy system. So each one of these energy centers also aligns with something physical within our body. So like for the fire element, it aligns with our sexual organs, the vulva, vagina, penis, all of the sexual organs, as well as excretion through our lower orifices. So, right, that means poop, pee, all of the things, right? So basically, each one of these elemental systems has a unique structure or quality associated with it. And when we tune into that using an elemental meditation practice and then start to use them sexually in the long run, we're able to purify these trigger points, I guess you can say, in real time. Okay, so that's why this is so potent and powerful, because we can feel it, sense it, and then start to purify it in real time. And that's the medicine of the energy body. And to me, you can't practice Tantra without understanding your energy body. It's just pointless, because you're just filling like this empty vessel that energy doesn't know where to go, right? There has to be the discernment. There has to be some level of non-attachment. There has to be these wisdoms that are arising for you from your personal practice before like diving deeper into especially the sexual components.
So these elements, when we're actually looking into them and becoming aware of them in our own bodies, as in your practice, are you doing this as you're helping them sit there and meditate and get through it themselves? Do you tell them to go home and maybe are they masturbating and doing this? Are they with a partner and doing that? Like, what's the actual process of trying to get intact with those elements?
Yeah, I love that question. It looks different for everyone, but the first step is to form that connection. So I will give the transmission of each element like every week or every 2 weeks, whatever it may be. And that client goes home and practices with that element every single week. And then by the point where we get to the top, right, with the water element. Then what we do is we learn how to run the elements, which is basically running the energy up and down the central channel. And there's a lot of different things to this, so I'm just kind of being short with it. But then they can go and learn how to layer the elemental system within their masturbation practice. So what I first teach is orgasmic awareness, and then after that, I'll teach lingam massage or yoni massage. They're doing this on themselves first. And then if they have a partner, right, we can also include the partner in this. And then eventually, once they both have an understanding of their energy body, they can come into union and use those practices.
Okay, so it starts, as you say, right? No one can really tap into their pleasure principle unless they're knowing how to love themselves, and that means physically. And then they merge on to using it with a partner, is essentially what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is pretty common, even when we're talking about tantric sex. It's like we can't, like, tantric sex is what happens after connection has been established. So for most people, they have a difficult time even fostering connection with themselves, let alone a partner, right? So this can be a process that's 3 months, 6 months, years long, until someone has enough of an understanding and enough of, right, their healing process that has undergone, so that they can step into union with themselves, with another person, and stay in that connection and presence for a long period of time. So the longer extension of that connection that can happen, that's when tantric sex starts to occur, I guess you can say. But it's more like an embodiment of the lifestyle, right? It's like you'll start having tantric sex probably without even realizing you're having tantric sex. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what was that? You're like feeling one with the universe, right? And this is what Tantra is all about. It's meant to be building this momentum, right? So that you can foster connection with yourself, with other people, with the universe as a whole, because these practices are not just for ourselves, they are for the benefit of all of humanity and the people that are around us. So if you cannot hold, that intention, in the long run, then your practice will fall flat, because it's not meant to be something that is just for you and you alone. And, especially when we're using like lineage-based Tantra, right? Like the medicine is already interwoven within those practices themselves, and that just means that the practices are amplified and the potency is even stronger in the long run, versus you just striving for like this one-time experience, because I promise you that is only going to be replicated for so long, and then you're going to get bored doing it and look for the next best thing, right? And that's not what we want. I'm not here to give somebody an experience. I'm here to provide this space for someone to evolve as a fucking human being on all levels of their awareness. And tantric sex is a beautiful part of that. Sexuality is a beautiful part of that. But it's like sometimes the process is a little bit slower than what some people anticipate. But that being said, it's not like I shy away from teaching about sexuality. Sometimes that's all people need. And I don't even teach the Tibetan 5-element practices, right? Sometimes it's just looking into the subconscious. Sometimes it's just learning orgasmic awareness. And that's sometimes the medicine that people need. So I'm not saying that, oh, if you want to learn more about Tantra, it has to be this 6-month, thing. That's not always the case. But yeah, just to give a little more understanding of how that process can look like for someone who does want to dive deeper into the embodiment of authentic Tantra. It is a longer term thing.
So when I am with somebody, they always say to me that I open up a floor for comfortability, and they all of a sudden, like, they meet me and it's like they can talk about anything. And I think it's because of obviously what I do and what I open up. And so I think that's possibly why even when I'm in the bedroom with them, like if they actually end up getting like physical rather than emotional, I feel like I'm in it for them instead of myself, because I feel like I'm opening up a floor for them. They usually wouldn't allow, like, if they're like, they have a kink, right? They know me being open and knowing this stuff and talking about this stuff so openly, they can be themselves. And if they know that I'll help them through it, you know what I mean? So when it comes to that, I feel like I'm helping them heal their own problems and I'm not focusing on myself. So one of the things I've been working on is orgasmic actual, like knowing that, well, so I learned that there's 9 different types of ways to orgasm, and that could be give or take because plenty of people have their own opinions, probably that including yourself, because some of that is a tantric orgasm. But within that sex, yes, I'm helping them. Yes, like I know that's their kink, but mine is connection. I need there to be that the breathing needs to be intact, the movement needs to be intact, that like everything needs to flow. Of course, sex is awkward sometimes. That's normal. But I'm trying to focus on, like, I'm telling them what I want, telling them this is what I need, telling them this is the part of my body that I need to be touched. And I do that by talking to them prior to, when you say this, the connection is before, what I like and what orgasms are there. So obviously there's the regular actual vaginal orgasm. There's the G-spot orgasm, anal orgasm. Then I also learned about the A-spot. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
The A-spot orgasm I've learned about. I learned then it gets into tantric, which is which I was talking about, the throat orgasm. And this essentially, the person was talking about how when someone's giving head, it was a bit, I was untrusting it myself, opens up that floor for communication to talk about sex more openly. I'm not sure what energy system that would align with, the air possibly. Then there was nipple, then there was a full body orgasm, then there was a blended orgasm. That's 9, right?
Yeah, I understand it's like 15 and then infinity. Like there's so many different blended types that we can have, right? But yeah, from the way I teach it is like over 15 different types. And it's in terms of the throat orgasm, I've never heard of that one. But yeah, if someone is in a relationship where they have trust and connection with one another, I'm sure that we can have orgasms in that area from an energetic standpoint that opens up,
the energetic,
you know, yeah.
So that's what I am trying to understand more, so is that intimacy does not mean penetration, and I talk about that so much. A lot of people think that when I say that I'm I talk about intimacy and I'm like a sex and relationship coach, they think that, oh, so you fuck, so like you want to fuck, like, and you're gonna fuck really good, and I hate that. I really hate that, because no, I'm actually talking about the connection that is formed. Like you're referring to how foreplay starts, way before y'all have sex, could be weeks before, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a frustrating standstill that I find myself in sometimes.
Yeah. And, when we're having sex with multiple people, like we can make love to someone and have a one night stand.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like that's such a taboo thing, I guess, that nobody talks about. It's like, but again, like that is because we find connection unsafe to some degree. Most people do, because it involves vulnerability,
mm-hmm.
and we don't want to get hurt. So in order to protect ourselves from that potential of pain, that's where like, I'm just going to fuck kind of attitude comes from. And if we could just allow ourselves to see us first on this deep connective level, like we can bring that into the bedroom and we will attract situations and people that align with that. Right?
Yeah. So I also read something that you were talking about how you don't essentially lose yourself in that moment. You're actually gaining, like you're actually bringing yourself up by having sex with these people. It's not a sense of lose. It's a win-win type of.
Yeah. Well, I think that another really big thing I hear a lot of talk about is like, you lose energy when you have sex with multiple people, or you take on imprints and memories from the person that you have sex with. Or I've heard crazy shit like you should shower every time you have sex because you're taking on the memories and energetics from that person. Mm-hmm. And what I can say to that is like, no one can imprint their energy on you unless you allow it. Mm-hmm. So again, if you do not have discernment and you're having sex with everybody and anybody, sure, you're probably going to pick up energetically on a lot of these things that are draining. But ultimately, these things are karmic, right? It's when that you're picking up on those imprints, memories, energetic, whatever from other people, it doesn't have anything to do with that person being a bad person or negative or toxic, right? It has everything to do with it being a mirror, a reflection to what you need to look at within yourself. So I think that, again, that's another coping thing that people do of like, they put the issue, they put the energy exchange on the other person, but it's two roads, right? Like, and we have to look at that every experience that we ever have as a human being is a reflection of ourselves. And if we're not enjoying ourselves in that moment, right, where can we add more discernment, love, connection, compassion, whatever it may be, so that we are inviting better situations into our lives?
So a lot of you were talking about like the showering. I've heard of sexual cleansing. And I can you tell me more? Do you know about sexual cleansing? Do you know what that is?
I'm assuming it's some energy type cleanse
Yeah.
from past relationships, because people are told that women store their past relationships, their sexual relationships in their bodies for 7 years. And
Yeah.
again, I think that this is just
That's what I'm talking about.
another puritanical bullshit thing that puts women in these
You're
situations
awesome.
of shame and guilt, so that
Yeah.
because we should be shameful for having sex with multiple people. Fuck that. I don't see men being called out for having sex with multiple women. Like, I think that we seem to think like these things don't exist anymore because we're so enlightened at this point and in our human
Not
evolution. And it's
enough.
just not the case. Like, it's still there and it's still very prevalent. And it's in those spiritual circles that are talking about this stuff still. And they think that it's from this perspective of being so enlightened and having so much awareness. And it's not, it's puritanical bullshit. You should, like, you don't need to cleanse yourself from a relationship that you had years ago. Like, what you need to do is look at the karmic links, patterns, thoughts, memories, and behaviors that are continuing to link you to that person. Has nothing to do with that other person,
Mm-hmm.
and everything to do with you not willing to look in and actually purify your own energy system and the things that you're holding on to, right?
A lot of people are very blameful. I've realized when I talk with people, and I'd say that you need to actually sit down and take a look at how much how much you're responsible for your own personal suffering. Because we as humans, we want to not take accountability. We want to blame. Like I could sit here and talk about my ex-boyfriend and say that he was some toxic motherfucker who did this, that, and the other. But I'm like, okay, where was I? Did I stay? Yes. Did I still have sex with him after he threatened my grandmother's stuff? Yes. Did I all this, like coming up, and that the karmic energy is what you're referring to. And I do talk to that. I tell people, I'm like, okay, but what did you do? They're like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong. I guarantee you probably did.
Right. And this isn't for me to throw shade on anyone else either, because then there's that whole topic of like abuse. And that's a very
Yes.
widespread thing. I work with a lot of clients that have been in abusive relationships. And the only thing that is preventing them from experiencing more love, joy, and fulfillment in their lives is feeling like connection is not a safe place to be and that they cannot trust themselves. So, again, it's not about them being linked to this other person in any way, but them taking their power back from the situations that they're probably already ashamed of being, associated with in the first place, right? Because bad things happen to us all the time that we are not prepared for, right? Including abuse, including sexual abuse, all of the things, right? But that doesn't mean that we were not victims. Of course, we were victims in that moment, 100%. But we are also not victim to what we made it mean about ourselves.
And how we move forward from that point of realizing, oh, I was a victim. Let's not stay that way. And like you said, gain that power back. Speaking of gaining power back, I want to hop back on the bandwagon of orgasms and talk about your product. I know you have a personal lubricant. So tell me more about how that came about and how you got into that. That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, I've just always loved herbalism. So from a young age, I've, researched different herbs, and especially aphrodisiacs. I've always had just an inkling for. I've really enjoyed working with, especially like, someone who works with the elemental system all the time, and, working with the earth and working with different herbal things. So yeah, I went and curated different products. And one of those things is an aphrodisiac body oil and personal lubricant. So it's an oil-based lube and massage oil that's infused with different aphrodisiacs that they really promote blood flow. They promote just good skin health, good pH. But it's just something that can be used overall. And yeah, I make very tiny, small batches. I'm still a very small, business owner over here. It's usually local, and I do some like shipping and things like that. But I love working with herbs. My aphrodisiacs are amazing. And my products are great too. Yeah, I make tinctures and all sorts of things.
So the personal lubricant is just a lubricant. It's not a sense of, does it add some type of sensory? I've used I got it in Florida. It was a CBD, like hemp. You put it on your clit, and it added, according to this person, again, I have also trust issues. You put it on your fingers, and you rub it on your clit, and it adds some type of more like sensitivity. Sensitivity is what the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. So I think that with those types of loops, like they'll add like menthol in it or cinnamon bark or something like that, that actually makes it heat up or tingle. I don't add anything like that in my products. I've used stuff like that in the past, but they actually irritated me a lot and made me break out. So I don't like to use those things. But the herbs that I did infuse into my product in particular, things like puama bark, shatavari root, things that are really great to use topically and that do promote heat and blood flow, but it's not like it's for sensitive skin. It's not like a crazy sensational feeling or anything. It's just overall, right? The herbs are in the oil itself, and it's just allowing the blood flow to come in. And I think that it does add a better experience for myself. I use lube like all the time for everything. Like I'm always using lubricant. It doesn't matter how wet I am. Like I'm always using lubricant. And I was pretty shocked to learn, like, as I was selling these products around the area, that a lot of women don't use lube, or they're even afraid to have that conversation with their partner. And then I'm like, well, do you experience vaginal pain during penetration? And a lot of women do. I'm like, you need lubricant.
That's the friction, honey.
First step, just buy a lube, like, and I just love having conversations, especially with men and women, about their sexual health and just hygiene. Like there's a lot of people that just they still don't know a lot about hygiene. They're getting, yeast infections all the time and UTIs. And as we know, this is like related a lot to trauma and stuff too, but the products do help. They're very supportive and just get people interested in their relationship to their sexuality and to their pleasure outside of the bedroom.
I also love having the conversation, and that's why I do this, and that's why I talk. Some of my episodes are about there's just one called "Is This Smell Normal or Am I Just Lonely?" And it talks about hygiene. It talks about shmega, and it talks about BV. And my last episode was about STDs, and people really don't understand it, and they get chlamydia, and they're like, "Oh my God, my life is over." No, honey, just antibiotic. You got to just wash yourself, take a shower, do your thing, take care of yourself, drink your liquids, whatever. And I provide it with a sense of calm rather than a sense of, oh my God, I'm freaking out because I have an STD.
Yeah.
I talked about how the with herpes and how that stigma is just absolutely awful. And herpes is obviously uncurable, but you can live with it, and doesn't necessarily go from person to person unless you have actually an act up. I just really talk about making things that are taboo become more normal. And when you say you like having that conversation, you bring it up in relationships with partners or solo or whatever. That's kind of what you and I want, right? We want that sense of normalcy. We want that sense of sex should be a normal thing to talk about. And so even some of my friends, they have never been to a sex shop before. And I'm like, oh, I'll take you. I'd love to go with you. So we'll go to Pandora's Box, or we'll shop online at Adams and Eve. And they're like, what is this? Why does that look like she's dying? And I'm like, no, that's BDSM. And like I have a whole episode about that. And so it's a really like, for me, I get really passionate when I talk about it because I know what I'm talking about. And I want people to have such an awesome sexual experience, whether inside the bedroom or outside the bedroom. And I feel like that floor needs to be opened up more. So I appreciate you for what you do as a fellow person. I mean, I have a lot more to learn, and you taught me a lot during this. One thing I want to talk about before we head out is the pleasure evolution. You talk a lot about that. Do we cover that yet? I don't think we did. Tell me more about pleasure evolution.
Yeah, I often say that I help people get off the emotional roller coaster and step into their pleasure evolution. And to me, pleasure evolution is less to do about pleasure itself and more to do about just claiming our full humanity as a human being. And that to me is pleasure, is joy, is fulfillment. And again, like so many of us are searching for the next best thing all the time. And what we need to cultivate is this ultimate presence within ourselves. And that's your pleasure evolution. That's where the evolution of your pleasure will occur, is through the presence, through the connection that you can hold within yourself. And yeah, that is why I'm here. That's why I'm put here on this earth, is to, have this evolution of our pleasure. And it also is like a revolution. Like your pleasure is a radical act. And we can literally change the world, one orgasm at a time, and just being more aware of our current experience and the level of connection that we are either engaging with or running away from.
And that mindset, exactly. It's a revolution. And I think what you're doing is amazing, and keep doing it because you're going to win the war. Absolutely. I always say this when I exit out of my podcast, but I wanted to kind of explain it to you because you would appreciate it. I have a saying called clit-municate. And what that means is communicate, but it's a little play on it. Always remember to educate yourself. Always remember to communicate what you want in the bedroom and outside the bedroom. And always remember to clit-municate. So I appreciate you coming on my show. I hope to have you again soon. We'll talk more, maybe thoroughly about certain things, and maybe we'll have to talk about, there's this one part of it says something by day, pole dancer by night. So I'd love to get more into that.
Buddhist by day, pole dancer by night. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. And that's that you're awesome. And your opinions are very valid, and you've taught me a lot. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Natalie.
You're welcome. Have a lovely rest of your day. Okay.